Let the noise of the present day fall away, dissolving into the gray mist of a morning that dawned nearly 3,000 years ago. We are drifting back through the strata of time, down through the concrete of the modern era, through the rubble of the Renaissance, through the marble of the Empire, until we reach the raw, living earth. We are standing on the edge of a world that is not yet Rome. It is the 8th century BCE. The sun is just beginning to bleed over the horizon, casting long, pale shadows across a landscape that feels wild and untamed. We are in central Italy, in the region of Latium. Before us lies a valley, a low, marshy depression nestled between steep, green hills. The air here is heavy. It holds the damp, mineral scent of the Tiber River, which snakes through the valley floor like a brown, sluggish serpent. This river is not the tamed waterway of later centuries, bound by stone embankments. It is a wild, unpredictable force, prone to violent floods that turn the valley into a vast, stagnant lake. The ground beneath our feet is soft, spongy with silt and ancient decay. Clouds of insects hang in the humid air, their low hum the only music in this desolate basin. This is the Velabrum, the primordial swamp that will one day become the Roman Forum. But look up. Lift your eyes from the mud to the heights above. Rising from the mists are the 7 hills. They stand like islands in the sea of fog, the Palatine, the Capitoline, the Aventine. On the slopes of the Palatine, you can see the faint orange glow of cooking fires. There are huts here. They are simple, circular dwellings, their walls woven from wattle and daub, their roofs thatched with dried river reeds. The people who live here are not men of marble. They are men of the earth. They are shepherds, outcasts and refugees, clinging to these defensible heights, watching the wolves prowl the valley floor below. They wear rough wool, smelling of lanolin and wood smoke. Their hands are calloused from the plow and the spear. They live a life of hard, rhythmic survival, dictated by the rising of the sun and the flooding of the river. They do not know that they are standing on the future capital of the world. They only know that the river provides water, the hills provide safety, and the gods, if honored correctly, might provide another day of life. The origin of this place is shrouded in the golden haze of myth. The Romans, a people obsessed with destiny, told themselves a story to explain their hard nature. They claim descent not from shepherds, but from the god of war, Mars. The legend tells of 2 brothers, Romulus and Remus, abandoned in a basket on the swelling waters of the Tiber. The river, sensing the weight of their destiny, deposited them gently on the muddy bank beneath a fig tree. There, a she-wolf, hearing their cries, descended from the hills. She nursed them. This image is the primal seal of Rome. It is a statement. We are a people fed on the milk of the wild. When the brothers grew to manhood, they sought to found a city on these hills. They looked to the sky for a sign, watching the flight of birds, the ancient art of augury. Remus saw 6 vultures. Romulus saw 12. A quarrel erupted, a flash of bronze in the sunlight. Romulus struck his brother down. Standing over the body, Romulus spoke the first law of the new city. So perish anyone else who shall leap over my walls. Rome was baptized in fratricide. It was a city that declared from its very first breath that the state was more important than the blood of family. History, however, gives us a quieter but no less profound moment of founding. Imagine Romulus, the first king, performing the sacred ritual of the pomerium. It is a crisp morning. He takes a bronze plow, yoked to a white bull and a white cow. He drives the blade into the earth, carving a deep, continuous furrow around the perimeter of the Palatine Hill. Listen to the sound of the bronze tearing the roots and the soil. This furrow is not a wall, it is a spiritual barrier. Everything inside the line is Rome, the realm of order, law, and the gods. Everything outside is the wild, the chaotic, the foreign. By turning the soil, he is separating the sacred from the profane. He is creating a here in a world of everywhere. For 250 years, this settlement grows under the rule of kings. They are figures of shadow and legend, each adding a layer to the city's soul. Numa Pompilius, the second king, is the quiet priest. He walks the oak groves, listening to the whispers of the nymph Egeria. He gives the city its rhythm. He divides the year into 12 months. He establishes the Vestal Virgins, the keepers of the sacred flame that must never go out. He teaches the rough shepherds that power is nothing without pietas, duty to the gods. Then comes Ancus Marcius, who looks to the water. He builds the Pons Sublicius, the first bridge across the Tiber. It is made entirely of wood, held together without a single iron nail, so that it can be dismantled quickly if enemies approach. With this bridge, Rome reaches across the river to the Janiculum Hill and the salt pans of the coast. The city is no longer an island, it is a crossroads. And finally, the Tarquins. These are Etruscan kings from the north, sophisticated, wealthy, and cruel. They bring with them the knowledge of stone. Under their rule, the city begins to change. They look at the mosquito-infested swamp of the Velabrum and decide to conquer it. They do not use magic, they use engineering. Thousands of laborers, their backs bent under the sun, dig a massive trench through the muck. They line it with stone. They enclose the wild stream of the valley into a dark, subterranean tunnel. This is the Cloaca Maxima, the Great Drain. It is the most important structure in Roman history. As the stagnant water drains away into the river, the marsh dries out. The valley floor hardens. The disparate villages on the hills can finally descend and meet. The swamp becomes the Forum. The Forum is the beating heart of Rome. It is a marketplace, a court, and a temple. It smells of sacrificial smoke, roasting meat, and the sweat of the crowd. It is where the Roman people learn to be citizens. The year is 509 BCE. The kings are expelled. The gates are barred against them. And in the vacuum of power, the Romans invent something the world has never seen. They create the Republic. The Republic is a machine built of tension. It is designed to prevent power from pooling in one place. Instead of a king, there are 2 consuls. They are elected for only 1 year. They can veto each other. They must answer to the Senate, a gathering of the city's elders, the patres, or fathers. But this new system is fragile. The city is divided. On one side are the patricians, the wealthy, land-owning aristocrats who claim descent from the first companions of Romulus. On the other are the plebeians, the common people, the farmers, the artisans, the foot soldiers. The plebeians realize they have a power of their own, the power of refusal. One day, tired of debt and abuse, they simply leave. They walk out of the city to the sacred mount. They refuse to work. They refuse to fight. The city grinds to a halt. The patricians, realizing they are generals without an army, are forced to compromise. They create the tribune of the plebs. This is a magistrate whose person is sacrosanct. To touch him is a capital crime. He has the power to stand in the Senate House and shout a single word: veto. I forbid. With this balance struck, Rome turns its eyes outward. For centuries, it is a city at war. The doors of the Temple of Janus, which are open in war and closed in peace, stand wide open, rusting on their hinges. The Roman soldier of this era is not a professional mercenary. He is a farmer. Picture Cincinnatus. It is 458 BCE. He is working his small 4-acre farm across the Tiber. He is stripped to the waist, digging a ditch. A delegation from the Senate arrives in a hurry. The city is in danger. An army is trapped in the hills. They tell him he has been named dictator, a man granted absolute power for 6 months to solve a crisis. Cincinnatus wipes the sweat and dirt from his hands. He calls to his wife, Ricilia, to bring his toga. He puts it on, hiding the dust of the fields. He goes to Rome, raises an army, marches into the mountains, and crushes the enemy in 15 days. And then he does the impossible. He does not keep the power. He resigns the dictatorship. He returns to his farm. He picks up his spade. This is the Roman ideal. The man who conquers not for glory, but so that he may return to the quiet rhythm of the soil. Slowly, methodically, this farmer army conquers Italy. They fight the Etruscan in the north. They fight the fierce Samnites in the mountains. They fight the Greek colonies in the south. They do not just defeat enemies, they absorb them. They build roads, straight stone arrows shot across the landscape, to bind the peninsula together. The Via Appia, the queen of roads, stretches south, a paved testament to Roman persistence. By 270 BCE, the entire boot of Italy belongs to Rome. But as they stand on the southern shores, looking out across the sparkling blue of the Mediterranean, they see a shadow on the horizon. Across the water, on the coast of Africa, sits a rival. A city of merchants, sailors, and elephants. Carthage. The collision is inevitable. Rome is the land power, the wolf. Carthage is the sea power, the whale. The First Punic War is a brutal, grinding struggle for the island of Sicily. The Romans, who have no navy, find a wrecked Carthaginian warship on a beach. In a frenzy of reverse engineering, they build a fleet of hundreds of ships in just 60 days. They attach a hooked bridge, called a corvus, to their prows. They turn sea battles into land battles, storming the enemy decks. Rome wins, but the peace is merely an intermission. The true storm breaks in 218 BCE. A man stands in Spain, his hand resting on a sacrificial altar. He is 29 years old. His name is Hannibal Barca. As a boy, his father made him swear an eternal hatred of Rome. Now, he intends to fulfill it. He does the unthinkable. He does not invade by sea. He marches an army of infantry, cavalry, and 37 war elephants north, through Spain, through Gaul, and to the foot of the Alps. It is late autumn. The mountain passes are choked with ice and snow. The local tribes roll boulders down on the column. Men and horses slip over the precipices, falling silently into the white void. The elephants, creatures of the sun, shiver and die in the freezing wind. But Hannibal pushes them on. He is a force of nature. He splits rocks with fire and vinegar to clear a path. After 15 days of frozen hell, a gaunt, ragged army descends into the green plains of Italy. Rome is terrified. They send army after army to stop him. Hannibal destroys them all. He is a ghost, a magician of the battlefield. He lures the Romans into icy rivers at the Trebia. He traps them in the morning mist at Lake Trasimene. And then comes Cannae. The year is 216 BCE. It is a hot, dusty day in southern Italy. 8 legions, nearly 80,000 men, march out to crush Hannibal once and for all. They are confident. They are the iron wall of the Republic. But Hannibal invites them in. He arranges his line in a crescent, bowing outward. As the Romans charge, the center of his line slowly retreats, bending back like a bowstring. The Romans, sensing victory, push harder, packing themselves tighter and tighter into the center. They are so crowded they cannot even lift their sword arms. Then, the trap snaps shut. Hannibal's African infantry swings in from the sides. His heavy cavalry hits the Romans from the rear. The Roman army is surrounded. The slaughter lasts for hours. It is mechanical and grim. The dust rises, choking the sun. By evening, 50,000 Romans lie dead. The flower of the aristocracy, the Senate, and the youth of the city are wiped out. Hannibal collects the gold rings from the fingers of the fallen knights. He sends them back to Carthage, pouring them onto the floor of the Senate house. A bushel of gold rings, a harvest of death. Rome should have surrendered. Any other city would have opened its gates. But Rome is the city of the wolf. The Senate bans the word peace. They limit mourning to 30 days. They free slaves to fill the legions. They refuse to ransom the prisoners. They simply keep fighting. Years pass. Hannibal marches up and down Italy, undefeated, but unable to strike the final blow against the stone walls of the capital. Meanwhile, Rome finds its own genius. A young general named Scipio, a survivor of Cannae, studies Hannibal. He learns that to defeat the lion, you must attack his den. He takes the war to Africa. Hannibal is recalled to defend his home. The two titans meet at the Battle of Zama in 202 BCE. This time, the Romans open lanes in their formation to let the elephants charge through harmlessly. Scipio's cavalry sweeps the field. Hannibal is defeated. Carthage is broken. Rome is the master of the world. Victory brings wealth, and wealth brings poison. The legions return from the wars not to their small farms, but to a changed land. The rich senators have bought up the countryside, creating vast plantations worked by the millions of slaves captured in the conquests. The small farmer, the backbone of the Republic, the Cincinnatus, cannot compete. He sells his land. He drifts into the city. Rome swells. It becomes a city of the poor, a teeming, angry mob crammed into rickety wooden tenements. The air in the Suburra, the slum district, is thick with the smell of unwashed bodies, rotting garbage, and despair. In the Senate House, men no longer argue for the good of the state. They argue for power. They argue for provinces to plunder. Two brothers, Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus, try to save the poor. They are tribunes. They propose land reform, taking land from the rich and giving it back to the soldier farmers. The senators call them kings. They call them tyrants. In 133 BCE, the political violence spills into the streets. Senators break up the wooden benches of the Forum and club Tiberius Gracchus to death. A decade later, his brother Gaius is hunted down and killed. The blood of the tribunes washes over the cobblestones. The taboo against political violence is broken. The Republic is dying. It is no longer ruled by laws, but by warlords. Powerful generals rise, men whose soldiers are loyal only to them, not to the state. Marius, who recruits the poor. Sulla, who marches his army on Rome itself, posting lists of enemies of the state in the Forum. The proscriptions. If your name is on the list, you can be killed on sight, your property seized.
The heads of senators rot on spikes in the rostra. From this chaos, one man emerges. He is a dandy, a debtor, a charmer, and a genius. He wears his toga loosely belted, a sign of affectation. His name is Gaius Julius Caesar.
Caesar knows that in this new world, power comes from two things: the love of the mob and the loyalty of the legions. He secures the mob with bread and circuses. He secures the legions by going north. He goes to Gaul, the wild forested lands of modern France. For 8 years, he disappears into the trees. He fights the Celtic tribes. He builds bridges across the Rhine just to show he can, and then burns them down. He besieges the chieftain Vercingetorix at Alesia, building a wall around the enemy, and then a second wall to protect himself. He writes home. His commentaries are read in the markets of Rome like adventure serials. Gallia est omnis divisa in partes tres. All Gaul is divided into 3 parts. The people love him, but the Senate fears him. His old ally, Pompey the Great, turns against him. They order Caesar to disband his army. They order him to return to Rome as a private citizen to face trial for his crimes. It is January, 49 BCE. Caesar stands on the banks of a small, insignificant river in northern Italy, the Rubicon. It marks the boundary of his province. To cross it with an army is treason. It is a declaration of civil war. He stands in the darkness, the breath of his horse misting in the cold air. He looks at the dark water. He looks at his veterans, men who have bled for him for a decade. He speaks quietly. Alea jacta est. The die is cast. He spurs his horse into the water. The civil war is swift and brutal. Caesar chases Pompey across the sea to Greece, destroying the Senate's army at Pharsalus. Pompey flees to Egypt, where he is murdered by a boy king hoping to curry favor. When Caesar arrives and is presented with the pickled head of his rival, he does not smile. He weeps. This was a Roman head. Caesar returns to Rome the undisputed master. He is named Dictator Perpetuo, dictator for life. He forgives his enemies. He reforms the calendar, giving us the 365-day year. He plans grand invasions. He sits on a golden chair in the Senate. But the old ghosts of the Republic are watching. The senators, men like Cassius and the noble Brutus, a descendant of the man who expelled the kings, see only a tyrant. They see the end of liberty. It is the Ides of March, 44 BCE. The Senate is meeting in the theater of Pompey. Caesar walks in, ignoring the omens, ignoring his wife's bad dreams. He takes his seat. The conspirators surround him, pretending to present a petition. Then, a hand grabs his toga, pulling it down from his shoulder. It is the signal. The knives flash. Casca strikes first, a glancing blow to the neck. Caesar rises, fighting back with his stylus. But then he sees Brutus. Brutus, whom he loved like a son. Brutus, with a dagger in his hand. Caesar stops fighting. He pulls his toga over his face, so that he may fall with dignity. He collapses at the foot of the statue of Pompey. The blood of the dictator pools on the cold stone. The conspirators rush out into the streets, their hands red, crying, "Liberty! Freedom! The tyrant is dead!" But the streets are silent. The people do not cheer. They rush to their homes and bar the doors. They know what is coming. The Republic is dead. But the Empire has not yet been born. The world hangs in the balance, waiting for the next master. The knives of the Ides of March did not bring liberty. They brought chaos. The Republic, for all its noble speeches, was a corpse. It could not be revived. The city held its breath, waiting for the next warlord to march through the gates. But the man who came was not a giant like Caesar. He was a boy. His name was Gaius Octavius, Caesar's grandnephew and heir. He was 18 years old. He was sickly, pale, and often ill. His enemies laughed at him. They called him the boy. They did not see the mind behind the pale eyes. They did not see a will of cold, unyielding iron. Octavian played the long game. He allied with Caesar's rough right-hand man, Mark Antony, to hunt down the assassins. Then, inevitably, he turned on Antony. The finale of the civil wars was played out not on land, but on the sea, off the coast of Greece at Actium, in 31 BCE. It was the old world against the new. Antony and the Egyptian queen Cleopatra represented the East, luxury, excess, the god-kings of old. Octavian represented the West, discipline, order, and the cold logic of the state. Octavian won. He returned to Rome the undisputed master of the known world. But he had learned from Caesar's mistake. He did not take the title of dictator. He did not call himself king. He called himself princeps, first citizen. He claimed to have restored the republic, even as he quietly gathered every lever of power into his own hands. The Senate gave him a new name, a name that tasted of divinity, Augustus, the Exalted One. Under Augustus, the fever of civil war finally broke. The doors of the Temple of Janus were closed for the first time in centuries. A strange and wonderful silence fell over the Mediterranean. The Pax Romana, the Roman peace, had begun. Augustus looked at the city of cramped brick tenements and muddy streets, and he decided to dress it in imperial robes. He famously boasted, "I found Rome a city of brick, and left it a city of marble." Walk with me now into the Rome of the Golden Age. The air has changed. The smell of the swamp is gone, replaced by the cool, wet scent of running water. This is the era of the aqueducts. Look to the horizon. Striding across the plains on giant stone legs are the artificial rivers, the Aqua Claudia, the Aqua Marcia. They bring billions of gallons of fresh, cold mountain water into the sweltering city every single day. They feed the fountains that splash in every square. They feed the great public baths, where the poorest laborer can scrub the dust of the day from his skin in halls of porphyry and gold. The city is no longer just a fortress. It is a work of art. The Pantheon rises, a temple to all the gods. Step inside. The noise of the street vanishes. You are in a vast rotunda, a perfect sphere of space. Above you, the great concrete dome, still the largest unreinforced concrete dome in the world, opens to the sky. The oculus, the unblinking eye, lets in a single shaft of sunlight that moves across the floor like a celestial clock. Here, the Romans trapped the sky itself in stone. But the peace of Rome is a managed peace. The mob, millions strong, still rumbles beneath the surface. To keep them quiet, the emperors give them bread, grain shipments from Egypt, and circuses. In the center of the city, a new mountain rises, not of nature, but of travertine and concrete. The Flavian Amphitheater. We know it as the Colosseum. Approach it at midday. The heat radiates off the white stone. The air is filled with a chaotic roar, the sound of 50,000 people screaming as one. Inside, the seating rises in steep tiers, a cross-section of Roman society. Senators in the front, soldiers and citizens in the middle, slaves and women at the very top. A complex canvas awning, the velarium, is stretched over the top to shade the crowd, manipulated by sailors from the imperial fleet. The arena floor is yellow sand, harina, chosen because it absorbs blood. This is the dark heart of the Pax Romana. The violence that was once the duty of the soldier has become the entertainment of the citizen. Below the floor, in the labyrinthine hypogeum, elevators and trapdoors are worked by sweating slaves, lifting lions, bears, and gladiators into the light. It is a machine of death, running with industrial efficiency. Yet, even in this brutality, there is order. The empire is a vast, interconnected organism. A man can walk from the mist-shrouded moors of Scotland to the burning sands of Syria without ever leaving Roman territory. He can use the same silver denarius coin to buy wine in a tavern in Gaul or a carpet in a market in Judea. He is protected by a single law. If he gets into trouble, he can stand tall and say the magic words, "Civis Romanus sum." I am a Roman citizen. The emperors who rule this world range from the wise to the mad. There is Nero, the artist who plays the lyre while the city burns, blaming the fire on a strange new cult called the Christians. There is Trajan, the soldier, who pushes the borders to their absolute limit. And there is Hadrian, the restless traveler. Hadrian realizes the empire can expand no further. It must now defend what it has. He travels to the cold, damp edge of the world, the province of Britannia. There, he orders a wall built, Hadrian's Wall. It stretches 80 miles from sea to sea, a stone belt across the waste of the island. Stand there for a moment. The wind howls, smelling of peat and salt. A lonely auxiliary soldier from Syria shivers in his cloak, staring out into the gray mist of the north. He is the end of the line. Behind him is civilization, baths, wine, and law. In front of him is the unknown. No summer lasts forever. The gold of the Augustan age slowly tarnishes to silver, and then to iron, and finally to rust. By the 3rd century CE, the machine begins to break. The problem is not one thing. It is everything at once. The climate turns against them. The Roman warm period ends. The winters get colder. The harvests in North Africa, the breadbasket of the empire, begin to fail. On the steppe, the grass dries up, pushing waves of migrating tribes, the Goths, the Vandals, the Franks, against the Roman borders. Inside the empire, the political heart stops beating. The Senate is powerless. The only vote that counts is the sword. This is the age of the barracks emperors. Generals are proclaimed emperor by their troops, march on Rome, rule for a few months, and are then assassinated by the next general. In one 50-year period, there are 26 emperors. Only one dies of natural causes. Money loses its meaning. To pay the armies, the emperors debase the currency, mixing copper into the silver. Prices skyrocket. A loaf of bread that cost 1 denarius costs 100. The economy paralyzes. The trade networks that brought pepper from India and silk from China begin to fray. The roads, once safe, are plagued by bandits. The lights of the empire are flickering out, one by one. 2 men try to stop the slide into darkness. They are giants of will, but they change Rome so fundamentally that it becomes unrecognizable. First is Diocletian, a tough soldier from the Balkans. He realizes the empire is too big for one man. He takes a knife and slices the map in half. He creates the tetrarchy, the rule of 4. There is now an east and a west, each with its own emperor. Rome, the ancient mother, is abandoned. The emperors no longer live there. It is too far from the frontiers. They move their courts to Milan, to Ravenna, to Nicomedia. The Senate is left to debate in an empty room. Then comes Constantine. He reunites the empire by the sword, winning a civil war at the Battle of the Milvian Bridge. He claims he saw a sign in the sky, a cross of light, and heard the words, "In this sign, conquer." Constantine makes two decisions that seal the fate of the Old World. First, he legalizes Christianity. The strange, persecuted cult of the martyrs comes out of the catacombs. The temples of Jupiter and Mars are closed. The smoke of animal sacrifice, which has defined the smell of the city for 1,000 years, ceases. The Vestal flame is extinguished. The old gods die, replaced by the chant of monks and the smell of incense. Second, he moves the capital. He builds a new Rome in the east, on the Bosporus Strait. He names it after himself, Constantinople. Constantinople is young, wealthy, and impregnable. Rome is old, tired, and vulnerable. The heart of the empire has been transplanted. The body in the west is left to wither. The end does not come with a bang, but with a series of shocks, like a dying heart skipping beats. The Germanic tribes, pushed by the terrifying Huns, pour across the frozen Rhine. The Roman legions, unpaid and undermanned, cannot stop them. They are not invaders in the traditional sense. They are migrants, armed and desperate, looking for land. The unthinkable happens in 410 CE. A Visigoth king named Alaric marches his army to the walls of Rome. He besieges the city. Inside, famine grips the population. The rich try to buy him off with gold and pepper, thousands of pounds of pepper. But Alaric wants more. On a humid night in August, the Salarian Gate is opened, perhaps by a slave, perhaps by a traitor. The enemy enters the city. For the first time in 800 years, since the Gauls of old, Rome is sacked. For 3 days the Goths plunder. They strip the gold from the statues. They carry off the silk and the silver. The psychological shock is absolute. Saint Jerome, writing from his cell in Bethlehem, weeps. The city which has taken the whole world is itself taken. But the empire limps on for another 60 years, a ghost of itself. The emperors in the West are mere puppets, children controlled by barbarian generals. Finally, in 476 CE, the farce ends. A German chieftain named Odoacer decides he has no need for a puppet. He marches into Ravenna and deposes the last Western emperor. The emperor is a boy, a teenager, named Romulus Augustulus. There is a deep, poetic irony in his name. He bears the name of the first king, Romulus, and the first emperor, Augustus. The history of Rome begins and ends with a Romulus. Odoacer does not kill him. He simply sends him away to a villa in the countryside with a pension. He packs up the imperial regalia, the crown, the scepter, the purple robes, and sends them to Constantinople with a note. There is no need for an emperor in the West. The sun sets. The Roman Empire in the West is gone. We return, finally, to the valley where we began. In the centuries that follow the fall, the silence returns. The great aqueducts are cut during sieges or fall into disrepair. The water stops flowing. The fountains dry up. The great baths, once loud with laughter and splashing water, fall silent and cold. Without the maintenance of the state, the Cloaca Maxima begins to clog. The water of the Tiber backs up. The Velabrum returns to the mud. The Forum Romanum, the stage of the world, is slowly buried. Every flood deposits a new layer of silt. The dust of crumbling brick settles over the marble. The ground level rises, year after year, century after century. By the Middle Ages, the triumphal arch of Septimius Severus is buried up to its waist. The podium of the rostra, where Cicero spoke, is deep underground. The temple of Vespasian is nothing but 3 lonely columns sticking out of the dirt. The people forget what these buildings were. They call the Colosseum a den of demons. They strip the marble cladding from the monuments to burn into lime for mortar, or to build new churches. The city consumes itself to survive. The Forum acquires a new name, the Campo Vaccino, the cow pasture. Where the Senate once debated the fate of Carthage, cows now graze on the grass. Where legions marched in triumph, shepherds lean on their staffs, watching the sunset over the ruins. The cycle is complete. The shepherd has returned to the hill. Yet look closely at the stones. They are broken, yes. They are buried, but they are not gone. Rome did not truly die. It transformed. It moved from the realm of stone into the realm of the mind. The laws of Rome became the laws of Europe. The language of Rome, Latin, birthed French, Spanish, Italian, and shaped English. The architecture of Rome, the dome, the arch, the pillar, still stands in the government buildings of nations that did not exist when the Forum was young. The dream of the eternal city is the dream of order in a chaotic world. It is the dream that we can build something that outlasts us. As the moon rises over the Palatine Hill tonight, casting long silver shadows across the broken columns of the Campo Vaccino, the city sleeps. But in the quiet, if you listen closely, you can still hear them. The strike of the plow, the splash of the aqueduct, the tramp of the legion, the scratch of the pen. The city has returned to the earth, but the echo remains. Good night.